what? On one line right now, I believe the gentleman who wrote me the very articulate email about Anonymous, the meme. Anonymous is on the line. Hello there.
Good evening, Mr. Bell.
Good evening, sir. Are you far away from a computer?
I am not, sir.
Okay. We have a little tunnel effect, but actually, you know what? It's perhaps better this way that your voice is not quite as clear as it might otherwise. All right, look. When you wrote me that, we had a communication, and during that communication, I did not ask you if you were part of Anonymous, and I don't think I'm going to ask you that now unless you want to just cop to it.
The thing about Anonymous is that those who openly profess to be members of Anonymous usually aren't. Anonymous is... The best way I can describe it is Anonymous is a shared pseudonym of a subset of people whose citizenship is the internet. Anybody who has been infected with the Anonymous meme is Anonymous. The only differentiation between an active member of Anonymous and somebody on the net is whether or not they take up the Guy Fawkes mask, say they're Anonymous, and then do something with it.
Okay. All that said, in your own mind, is you or isn't you? And you don't have to answer that. You can say, I'm not going to answer that.
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay, cool. I guess here's where I want to begin with you. I want to understand a little bit about Anonymous. For example, targets. When Anonymous decides to hit a target, generally, would you say that these are people who most of the population would view as not necessarily villainous, but perhaps having done something wrong, having harmed or hurt somebody? Is that the kind of target that you go after?
In the past 5 years, that has largely been the case. Early in the history of the Anonymous meme, that was not the case.
Okay, so is there I've listened to a number of messages from Anonymous on the web, and there is a philosophy, and it touches on politics, it touches on the economics of the world, the unfairness going on. Is that fair to say it's all part of what Anonymous is?
It is accurate to say that those are the considered opinions of some Anons who have made it their mission to speak out and occasionally to undertake direct action about those things. There are other Anons who, quite frankly, couldn't care less. And that is entirely their decision, for good, for ill, or for indifferent.
Sure. So it's kind of it's controlled anarchy? Or uncontrolled anarchy?
I would say barely controlled anarchy.
Barely controlled. Okay.
By and large, Anonymous does. So the thing about anarchy is it doesn't mean there are no rules. It means there are no rulers. And Anonymous does have some rules that most Anons tend to follow.
Right. Right.
One of them is if you openly profess to be Anonymous, then you are not Anonymous. Another one is you don't go after the media.
Really? Oh, we are so pleased to hear that one.
No, we live in a media-saturated culture and a media-saturated world. If it doesn't wind up on the news, it didn't happen. Doesn't matter what it was. Somebody could let off a nuclear device, but if it wasn't on the 6 o'clock news, most people would have no idea.
Boy, are you right about that.
So because of this, the media is probably the greatest weapon that Anonymous has, because power perceived is power achieved. And if you can convince enough people that you wield power, you have that power, and you can do what you like with it.
Yeah. Is this meme growing, in your opinion?
Absolutely. This is in part due to the fact that cadres of Anonymous occasionally hold recruiting drives, or at least I think of them as recruiting drives, where they seek out new members. They hold what amount to boot camps for operational security, privacy, encryption, how to access any of the anonymous communications networks, how to essentially compartmentalize your life as an anon from your work life, your home life, your school life, things like that.
Wow.
And also, by utilizing the media as a communications medium and a weapon, the meme is propagated to people who would otherwise probably never have encountered Anonymous before. And some number of people who have learned about Anonymous by watching watching and learning about ops on the news or reading in the paper may have joined.
No secret handshakes, right?
No secret handshakes. By and large,
Sorry,
you have to.
I had to ask. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. By and large, you just have to have a pretty thick skin. If you don't, give as well as you get, and generally try to treat other anons the way you'd want to be treated. Of course, there were some anons who couldn't care less about that, but by and large, anons in the anonymous hive mind tend to sink or swim based upon what they accomplish and how many people that they can convince to help them do something.
A lot of people know about the internet, of course. A lot of people don't know that there's something deep and dark under what we see as the internet, right?
That is the case.
In fact, so deep and dark that most friends I have, even the pretty, literate computer users, say, for God's sakes, don't go there. I don't know, what do you call it? The undernet, the darknet, the devil's nest, what?
It really depends on on which of these networks you mean. The Tor network is often called the darknet,
right?
But there are other websites that are on the public net, which would most certainly fit the description. The only difference between a hidden computer network and an overt but extremely over the top and frightening website is whether or not you go to it. And there are other sorts of computer networks which could also be said to fit that general description.
Even if somebody knew how to go to some of the places you described, would it be fair to describe these places for the average computer user as more than a little dangerous?
Define danger, please.
Not being able to use your computer anymore? I don't know.
I need to think about that for a moment. So, for some of these sites...
Possibly not caring about your bank balance? I don't know. I'm just trying to present danger here.
Perfectly valid forms of danger. So, I think I should take those in descending order of complexity.
Sure.
For some of the hidden chat servers and websites on the Tor darknet,
yes,
I have yet to encounter any sites which are specifically booby-trapped to try to compromise the browser's computer. It doesn't mean they're not out there. It doesn't mean that no one will try it in the future. It means that in the time I've spent exploring them and actually looking for them, I haven't found any. It is more likely that your average casual user would be hit by a compromised website on what we would consider the civilian or the public net, or would be hit by a spear phishing attack, which would redirect them to a compromised site for that specific purpose.
It's true. There's plenty of stuff like that on the regular net, but I would imagine once you get down there, I'm sure somebody like yourself knows how to navigate your way through that, or do you even fear entering that area? There
is always fear. The thing about fear is fear reminds you to be cautious. It
That's
reminds
true.
you not to take things at face value, and
True.
it reminds you to trust your intuition. And if your intuition is screaming at you saying, for God's sake, don't go here, there's something wrong,
Right.
you should probably listen to it.
And if it says Uncle Carl has left you $45 million, and don't go there either.
Yeah, don't go there either.
Okay.
Or if you do, fill in the name and address of Godzilla McMurphy at 123 NE Street, Silverdale, California.
That's right. That's right. Is there any reason for the general public to fear Anonymous? Oh, you have to think about it.
Oh, yes. There are individual Anons who may be inclined to make people's lives difficult in the extreme under the aegis of Anonymous.
I see.
In recent years, some of the major data breaches at government agencies, very large corporations, or let's say companies that certainly do not have the best interests of people in general or citizens of the internet in particular at heart, their employees would most certainly be valid targets. One of the things that come to mind are some of the surveillance software companies that were compromised by Anonymous in the past couple of years, where employee records were dumped on the net as a way of shaming the employees for working for companies that sell surveillance hardware and software to whoever can buy it.
All right. Let's see. What else do I want to ask you? What would you want if you were to describe Anonymous to the general public in at least a fair way? How would you describe it?
I would describe Anonymous as a hive mind, and possibly I would describe it as an emergent phenomenon of the first generation of people who were, for all intents and purposes, born and raised on the internet.
Born and raised on the internet. Yes, very good point. Man, that's really incredible. What a world we live in today. I'm simply amazed. And going back to a very important point that you made, you said Anonymous does not go after the media.
By and large, no, they don't. Because
I, for one, am so happy to hear that.
The thing about the media is, if you want to get your message out, you have to at least let the media get close enough to you to take notes and come up with a story of some kind.
Well, that's true. That's true. I did make an appeal on Twitter, and boy, I did get a big response. Not at first, but pretty big response. So I'm impressed. You saw it, did you? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that we are being monitored right now? In other words, do you think NSA or whoever monitors this kind of thing is trying to figure out who you are and where you are and what you're up to?
I have no doubt at all. And by the way, hello everyone at Fort Meade.
Yeah, I'm sure they're listening. So I'm not going to hold this very long. I would like to make you my, official information source for Anonymous. I wonder if that's fair. You mind being an official information source?
I wouldn't say I'm official, but if I can help somehow, I'd like to.
Okay, how about unofficial information source?
That's fair.
All right. I will call upon you in the future, as the Godfather said. Listen, brother, thank you very, very much. I've always wanted to speak with somebody like yourself. Take care and good luck. I hope the door stays closed and all of that stuff. Thank you very, very much. I think it took a lot of guts to do what that man just did, so thank you, buddy. I'm Art Bell. Somebody called Classified has tempted me to answer. That's an interesting, plus there's a big picture of the gray on this person's Skype. So Classified, hello.
Mr. Bell, can you hear me?
I can.
I have to keep this very brief, so I'll get to the point.
Please.
I was involved with an organization that hacked into classified NSA servers, top secret.
Seriously?
Compartmented. Can you hear me?
Yeah, seriously? You
Yeah, and NSA monitors Skype, so I have to keep this quick.
I know they do. Okay.
I came across partial documents which contained what appeared to be evidence of the United States government in compliance with extraterrestrials using genetically modified foods, colloquially known as GMO. The goal was to experiment with modifying human DNA so extraterrestrials and the human immune systems don't attack each other upon contact. This is to facilitate their crossbreeding agenda.
Oh my God.
These extraterrestrials are trying to stop organic food movement because they want everyone to eat these GMOs. That is what it appeared. This could be just disinformation. This could be real, but that's what it showed when we got into their servers. The U.S. government's using high-frequency active auroral research program, HAARP, to cause the devastating drought on the West Coast so they can bankrupt and buy out the organic farms to keep prices high. I have to go right now. Goodbye. Have a great show.
Wow. Well, I'm going to say that's unusual, and we might hear from him again, or we might never hear from him again. No idea who that was. Just called himself classified. And I hope we hear from him again, frankly. But let me begin here because, of course, the Paris attacks. The CIA director says more attacks are likely in the pipeline. There were to be seen today lots of ISIS guys on CNN saying, Europe, we got you and we're going to get you again, and America, you're next. American blood, they say is the best. American blood. Our intelligence agencies are strained. And when they say that, they really mean it. If our intel agencies, if the NSA is strained to keep up with everybody who's here or might be here or has bad plans, then we're in big trouble. Lots of raids in France associated with, and Belgium, associated with a bunch of arrests. They arrested a whole group of even suspected people. So we know the Paris area was shocked by a major terrorist attack Friday night. It's being claimed by the Neo-Caliphate, I like that phrase, terrorist group ISIS. But just hours before the attack was carried out, Facebook removed a key anonymous group responsible for identifying and reporting thousands of social media accounts used by ISIS recruiters. Now let's think about that. Anonymous on our side, in the sense that they're exposing groups planning to attack us, right? Now, regardless of what you think about ISIS, their origins, and who is pulling the strings and funding them, one thing is clear. They've been spreading their ideology and recruiting using Facebook and Twitter more than on-the-ground traditional methods. We talked about this last week. The anonymous group Red Cult initiated an operation to counter the ISIS social media presence called hashtag OpISIS, Operation ISIS, in other words. We at Counter Current News, that's where this story came from, have been the primary contact point for OpISIS from the start, and we continue to be today. That's why our source in the Red Cult told us today that a group calling itself Report ISIS Accounts run by Anonymous was removed by Facebook, and the administrators from the group all banned. The anonymous group Red Cult initiated an operation to counter the ISIS social media presence called, again, OpISIS, and, you've got to ask why. Why keep Anonymous from doing the job that American and European law enforcement either are unable to do or overstrained or unwilling to do. Exposing accounts used by ISIS to operate and recruit on social media. Facebook has refused to respond to inquiries from Red Cult or from Countercurrent News and several other alternative media outlets who have contacted them directly. Now, Facebook, as you know, has its own terms of service agreement. What I want you to hear is a message that I have on my Facebook. If you can take looking at this masked ISIS face, and I want to play this for you here on the air. The only thing you're missing is video. If you go to my website, you're not going to miss that. It's up there for you right now. But here's what they are saying. This is kind of a ISIS sort of introduction right now, which is worth watching, by the way. The video you're listening to, available on my website. This is, of course, from our friends at Anonymous.
Greetings, citizen of the world, and Facebook. We are Anonymous Red Cult. As most of you know, we're engaged in Operation ISIS from some time now, to fight ISIS online in different ways, like taking down ISIS sites, leaking information, exposing ISIS accounts on social media sites. One of our groups on Facebook called Report ISIS Accounts, with the URL www.facebook.com/groups/opisis, and it's dedicated to post and report ISIS accounts from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook and other social media sites, where we reported and deactivated thousands of accounts they use to communicate, recruit, and spread ISIS propaganda. Few hours ago, Facebook decided to close this group and block the admins for 3 days, without giving any explanation for it, except, quote, "We removed the post below because it doesn't follow the Facebook community standards," end of quote. So we asked, is it because ISIS supporters reported us back? And if so, for what reason? Or Facebook is bothered from us reporting terrorists' accounts that violate Facebook community standards anyway, by using fake names and posting inappropriate and violent propaganda that only serve ISIS terrorism. We asked, is this one of the new Facebook policies, to protect terrorists' accounts, instead of fighting it? Or simply Facebook doesn't care? We leave this for the public opinion to judge this action by Facebook, action that can only be interpreted that Facebook took a wrong decision. Anyway, we will continue our fight on ISIS. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
So, yeah, there's the audio, and that if that's not enough, trust me, you need to see the video. It's on my website, artbell.com now. As you know, some weeks ago, months ago, was it now? I believe, I solicited Anonymous so that I could speak to Anonymous. Well, what I got was the doctor. Now, the doctor is... This is very difficult. The doctor is... Doctor, what are you? What would you prefer to be called?
You may as well use my handle. Call me the doctor.
Okay, the doctor. All right, good. All right, so you heard that, and I'm sure that's not the first time you heard it. It would seem on the face of it that Facebook is abridging the First Amendment right of Anonymous to do what? To expose ISIS? and that's bad?
I do think it's problematic. I also think it's incredibly strange because from what I've observed, Anonymous in general and Red Cult in particular have had varying success with having the accounts of ISIS recruiters taken offline, but they seem to be getting hit. But Anonymous seems to periodically get its own presence knocked offline and then brought back with no explanation. The Op ISIS page being taken offline just hours before the massacre in Paris began is extremely strange.
Yes.
I did a little bit of research earlier today and discovered that not too long after the massacre was over and the carnage was being cleaned up, the Op ISIS page was mysteriously brought back online without any comment from Facebook management, or Facebook content management, I should say.
Well, fascinating. So, in other words, you don't know if they reported you for some weird thing, reported them for some weird thing, and that's why it was taken down.
It's possible. It's possible that some number of people in ISIS had reported that page and asked it to be taken down, and because Facebook is somewhat notorious for its real name policy, and by real name policy I mean if you get out of bed with your right foot on the first instead of your left foot, they may freeze your account.
That's right. That's right. I'm a freezee. I've been frozen 3 times.
Yeah, so it's possible that some ISIS recruiters had a page frozen, they unfroze it. It's possible that Facebook, for whatever reason, got a hair up its nose and froze it and then unfroze it. It's possible that someone told them to temporarily suspend the Op ISIS account. I don't know. It's
a mystery.
It's a mystery. It's strange.
All right. Let me ask you this: is Anonymous getting in a position where it's going to virtually be at war with ISIS?
Yes.
And that war is going to consist of taking down their sites, I would presume, with various attacks, and then the war would consist perhaps of also seeking out, finding, and making public sites where they are chattering to each other.
As well as quite possibly the identities of ISIS operatives. There's evidence that hacktivists were involved in stopping an attack in Tunisia some months ago. There's evidence that hacktivists were involved in stopping a plot in New York some months ago.
Well then, why in heaven's name doesn't our government, through some back door, allow information to be shared with them? Is there any of that going on, or can you not comment?
I have no idea. My thought is that is not the case, simply because governments tend to not like working with fifth columns, and Anonymous is sort of the ultimate fifth column.
So would you imagine that my Facebook account, which I do enjoy, is now in some jeopardy, or do you think it'll remain up there?
I don't think it's in any jeopardy. At least not immediately, unless someone decides that they're not an Art Bell fan and decides to hit that little report button.
Yeah. Well, I have been signed, sealed, delivered with I believe I had to send a picture ID, and I had to send my driver's license. So they should know who I am, but I guess they could have temporary amnesia.
They could. Facebook's content management team is extremely large. It's spread across multiple continents, but they all have more or less equal access and authority to do what they're charged with, which is determine who is and is not allowed to use the service.
All right. Here's a question for you. Do you know if Facebook or Twitter have made any public comment about the fact that ISIS is known to use these social media as ways to communicate? Have they made any comment about it?
To the best of my knowledge, no, nobody has. Lots of other people have. Certainly lawyers have, law enforcement agencies have, government agencies have.
Okay. Well, I will depend on you for updates in the war. I would love to know how it's going, and if you have any future trouble of this kind, I sure hope you'll get hold of me first.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. That is the doctor, and he it would, I think, wants to be known just as the doctor, but he is sort of a consultant for us when it comes to matters of Anonymous. So at some point between the phone freaking and the hacking and high school, at some point there, you turned the corner with computers. How did that happen?
What do you mean by turn the corner? You mean
turn the corner? In other words, from phone freaking and messing around in school, you somehow then graduated to, well, I don't know, bigger and more dangerous things.
Oh yeah, well, I started more hacking into the phone company because at the time I was definitely interested in phone freaking. Then I took the ability of learning about computer systems to breach Pacific Bell and General Telephone's computer networks and gain control of phone company switches, if you will. So basically had the ability to do anything with anybody's phone service in California at the time, California, Nevada. And that's kind of and we did it not really for any, not any malicious purposes. It was more for pulling pranks, like changing what they call the line class code in a switch on a phone number. And what that did is change the type of service. So, we'd go in and change, our friends' home phones to pay phones.
Yes.
So every time they'd make a call, say, please deposit, 25 cents to the point of, changing their service to a prison phone so they could only make collect calls.
And I
also this type of
also
stuff.
seem to recall that phone freaks would get together on dead trunks and they would speak with each other. Now, I only know these things, of course, because I've interviewed so many people like you. And please, folks, don't call yet. They're calling now, and we're not ready for calls. But anyway, so there would be like party line conversations between phone freaks, all right?
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yes, and I would imagine you were, well, with some of the information you had, you must have been kind of like a king back then.
Well, I didn't really associate with many people. I had a few, close friends that also were into the same type of hobby, and we just wanted to learn everything there was. So we would talk to others more to, acting like a sponge to get more information.
Yes.
But we weren't really. It wasn't like I'd sit there and hang out on these conference lines just to talk to people. That wasn't really interesting. What I wanted to do was learn the information. How can I get better at gaining more control over telephone company computer systems to pull pranks? That was really the initial goal back in those days.
All right. A couple of myths possibly about you, or not myths. You can clear them up. The whistling you've already covered, but was there something about nuclear weapons? Really?
Oh, well, oh yeah. So if you fast forward, back to like 1989, I was arrested by the FBI, and
let's stop here. How did the FBI get on to you?
Well, one of the guys that was kind of hacking with me got upset with me, and he basically called the FBI and told them what I was doing. So it was basically
you were
they
ratted
didn't know
out.
what I was doing at the time, and so he acted as an informant and basically told him what's going on.
So you were ratted out.
Essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
He did this why? Because you were in a tiff with him over something?
Well, I mean, I'll give you I'll tell you the story. So we'd constantly be betting against each other, to see, who could do, the better hacking.
Sure.
And the bet was always $150, dinner for two at Spago's. We figured out it's $150.
Right.
And I kept winning. Right. And then he got upset about it and said, well, I'm not going to pay you. And I said, oh yeah, you're not, even though, we have this bet going.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I'm not paying you. And I said, okay. Then I figured I'd like just, kind of play a joke on him. So, and so what I did is on a Friday when he was getting paid, I called up the company and represented us with the Internal Revenue Service, and we're faxing over our garnishment order. So please don't, please do not give him his check. Right? And the whole idea was just to inconvenience him for the weekend. It was it was like a joke, a practical joke. But he got really, really angry over the whole thing, and then went to his boss. Yeah. And told him all the hacking we were doing, and then they both called the FBI together. So that's basically how I got caught. Was other people knew what I was doing and informed on me.
Ah, that's sad. Well, the FBI apparently did not get you right away, or you were on the lam for a while, or what?
Well, that was later. So I was basically. I was okay. So
this was your first.
So I was arrested.
All right. So this was your first brush with the FBI.
First brush.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So I ended up in court, in federal court, and I was arrested like on a Friday, and I end up I was in custody at Terminal Island Federal Prison for the weekend, which wasn't fun at all. And I end up in court, and I'm positive I'm going to get bailed out. It just matters how much is the bail going to be. So I end up in federal court, and I walk in, and this attorney walks in that's going to immediately represent me, a federal public defender. He goes, "Have you ever been outside the country?" I go, "No." "Have you ever had a passport?" "No." And we go into court, and the federal prosecutor starts telling this judge, not only do we have to hold Mr. Mitnick without bond because he's such a danger to the community, we have to make sure he can't get access to a telephone. And then he goes on to say, if Mr. Mitnick gets access to a telephone, even a payphone in custody, he could dial up to the modem at NORAD, and he could whistle into the modem and communicate with the modem and instruct it to pass the launch codes to the ICBMs and start a nuclear war.
And you're telling me this judge...
I started laughing.
This
I never heard of something
This
so
judge bought it?
The judge bought it. Or the judge maybe didn't buy it, but just figured...
Didn't matter.
Didn't matter. And so I was held in what they call the hole in the Metropolitan Detention Center in L.A. for almost a year. The only way I got out of the hole...
What? A year?
A year in solitary confinement. The only reason I got out was I agreed to plead guilty. So the prosecutor told my attorney, if Kevin just, does what we want.
Wait a minute. What were the actual charges?
Possession of unauthorized access devices. So I had access codes to be able to dial into MCI, which was a long distance carrier, and then hacking into DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation, and getting access to source code of one of their security tools that acted as an automated hacker because I wanted to learn how the tool worked. So
that's fairly serious, actually.
Anyway, there were serious charges, but so in any event, later on, after about a year, I was able to get out of there because
before we even leave this, what's it like to spend a year in solitary?
It was pretty tough. Can you imagine? Like all your listeners going into their bathroom, in their home, and shutting the door behind them and not leaving for a year. Now, mind you, they allowed you to shower for three times a week. They'd let you go into this recreational area that wasn't so much bigger, 1 hour a day.
Only I can imagine that after an extremely spicy dinner. Otherwise,
but I'm telling you, I mean, it was pretty horrific. I wonder how that actually affected me today. But the idea that you're just locked in this, the cell, 23 out of 24 hours a day for a year is like, it was just an incredible amount of like how, I asked myself today, how did I get through such an ordeal? And I just did. You just adapt.
Right. Well, what did you do? I mean, did you sit in your cell and just sort of think? Did you think about computers? Did you think about women? What did you think about?
Thought about escaping. If you
really?
want to know the truth.
Really?
How do I get the hell out of there? Right. So that's kind of like what I thought about. But I had, they allowed me because I wasn't there for being, disciplinary reason. They allowed me to get a Walkman radio, which passed a lot of time, and reading books and, sleeping, so a lot of sleeping. But it was a pretty...
Weren't they afraid you'd rearrange the radio and set off a hydrogen bomb?
But, I'll tell you one thing. So imagine I'm in solitary confinement in a federal prison, facing 400 years for hacking into Digital Equipment Corporation. And remember how they said I was so dangerous I couldn't be near a telephone, so the judge... Okay,
now you suddenly got closer to the mic and you sound better. I don't know what you did, but...
I'm holding the mic to my face. I'll start doing that more frequently.
Please.
So anyway, the judge made a special order that I was only allowed to call 5 people at the time, and that was my my mother, my grandmother, my attorney, my father. Like I had 5 people on the list that I could call.
Right.
And so imagine I'm in solitary confinement, and at the time I was married, and I could only call my wife's home number at the time. And she was always at work, and and funny enough, she worked at General Telephone in Thousand Oaks. Yeah, so that was pretty funny. But in any event, so when they would allow me to make a phone call, it was always during the day. So the guard would shackle my hands, shackle my feet,
Right.
walk me over to this room that had 3 payphones, and the payphones had the handset cords were quite long. And then the guard would take out this logbook. He'd say, "Who do you want to call?" And I'd tell him who I want to call. He would dial the number with a 0 in front of it because it always had to be collect. And he'd hand me the phone, and he'd sit in the chair watching every move I made. And then I was thinking,
just waiting for you to whistle.
no. Well, maybe. But, it got even better than this because I figured I had nothing to lose. What else could they do to me? I'm in solitary confinement in a federal prison. It can't get any worse. So I figured, okay, I'm going to try to beat their system. So what I did is I'd pace back and forth when I was on the phone. I'd be scratching my back. I'd be rubbing my back against the payphone, facing the guard. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I really wanted to talk to my wife at the time, who was actually at work, and her number wasn't on the list. The work number wasn't on there. So basically, I put my hand behind my back, and I hung up the switch hook. And I knew, then I put my hand in front of me and just acted like I was rubbing my back against the phone again. And I knew I had 18 seconds before it would start going to what they call a reorder, like a fast busy tone, and
Right.
he would hear it.
Right.
And then I reached back, in back of me and acted like I was scratching my back, and I dialed 0 plus, the work number. And I was pretty good with using a touchtone pad. It wasn't that hard.
Sure.
And as I was walking, I acted like I was in conversation, because the operator was going to come on and say, "Who's the call from?" So I'd say, "Well, tell Uncle Mitchell that Kevin said hi." And when I said the word Kevin, that's when the operator was asking who the call's from. And I was able to do this, right, to call anybody that I wanted for 3 to 4 weeks. And then one morning, about 6 a.m, my cell door opens, and it's the executives of the prison, the associate warden, like 2 of them, the captain. I thought that, maybe a family member had died. Something really serious was going on.
Right.
So they brought me into this room, and they sat me down. And then the captain, he's the head of security, goes, "Mitnick, how are you doing it?" And I go, "Excuse me, how am I doing what?" He says, "Well, we're monitoring your phone calls downstairs. We're actually recording all of them. You do have notice about this. And somehow our officer is watching you every second, and you're somehow redialing the phone. How are you doing it?" And then I remarked to him, I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Do you think, what do you think I am, David Copperfield?"
Right.
Right. And, they didn't like my sense of humor. So they, threw me back in the cell. And then a couple days later, Pacific Bell was out, and they were installing a phone jack in the hallway near where my cell was.
Really?
And I was thinking, are these guys stupid enough to actually, put a phone in my cell that's restricted to calling certain numbers?
Apparently.
That was what going through my head. They couldn't be that stupid. So when it ended up that I actually had to make a call, it was a little bit different. The guard brought a phone. He plugged it into the jack. He dialed the number and then put the handset through the trap door, where they feed you in the cell. So the only thing I could touch was the handset.
Right.
So I kind of felt like Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs.
Man, what a story. How many of you, hold up your hands, have heard of numbers stations? Well, that's a fair amount of hands. Numbers stations are used by, spies. Typically, they appear on shortwave frequencies. All around the shortwave band, you can hear them, and there'll be some lady saying 61, 7, 18, 4, 30, 32, and, it goes on and on like that, droning in a sort of a boring voice. What those actually are codes to operatives in the field way out there somewhere, other side of the world. Yeah, it lives on from the Cold War days. Now, having said that, there is a frequency which is no secret. It is 11,175 megahertz. And on 11,175 we have SAC, the acronym for the Strategic Air Command, the guys who carry the big bombs. Now, this is a well-known SAC frequency where planes communicate with base and each other and what have you, and it's done in plain English. What I'm about to play for you was recorded by a shortwave listener, and I don't know who it is. It's on Reddit. You can investigate this further. But they claim they recorded it on 11,175. If they did, then it's pretty chilling. This, if it's that frequency, this would be coming from SAC to I don't know who. Now, the person that recorded it missed the very beginning, which in the very beginning just said, to all stations, alert all stations. And then this is going to seem strange to you. It's not numbers, but it's clearly a code transmitted on the SAC frequency. And at the end, it's going to be hard for you to hear. I grabbed the wrong recording, but he says, collapse out. That's the call sign, collapse. So listen very carefully. And also one other thing for you to note as you're listening to this, you're going to hear a little tiny echo. And that echo is the signal going all the way around the world. That's what's producing the echo that you're going to hear in this recording. So you're not going to make anything out of it. It's a code, but what's it doing on a SAC frequency? Here you go.
Clap, break, Quebec, Sierra, X-ray, Delta, 5, Oscar, standby. Quebec, Sierra, X-ray, Delta, 5, Oscar, standby. Quebec, Sierra, X-ray, Delta, 5, Oscar, standby. As follows. Quebec, Sierra, X-ray, Delta, 5, Oscar, Foxtrot, Paul, Uniform, Oscar, Alpha, Whiskey, Oscar, Hotel, Sierra, Kilo, Foxtrot, 7, Quebec, Bravo, Alpha, X-ray, 4, Golf, Foxtrot, 5, Uniform, Bravo, Foxtrot, Kilo, 5, Vegas. Quebec, Sierra, X-ray, Delta, 5, Oscar, Foxtrot, Paul, Uniform, Oscar, Alpha, Whiskey, Oscar, Hotel, Sierra, Kilo, Foxtrot, 7, Quebec, Bravo, Alpha, X-ray, 4, Golf, Foxtrot, 5, Uniform, Romeo, Foxtrot, Kilo. This is collapse out.
There you go. That was it. And he said collapse out. And then you heard a couple touch tones designed to trip something. Perhaps to turn the radio off on the other end. I have no way of knowing. But if in fact, and again, I didn't record it. It was recorded by somebody on Reddit. But if in fact it really was, as they advertised, 11,175, then that was a little chilling. Beyond that, I have no guesses for you about what you just heard.